Hey everybody, this is Dead Winter Dead, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4. Well, after playing a lot of Hearts of Iron 4, both on camera and off camera, and really trying to get into the game, dig into the game, and just enjoy it. Just enjoy how fun the game is. I started to think into the future. Just look into the future and wonder about the upcoming DLC. I would imagine that Paradox has a plethora of DLC planned for this title. I've read in forums that some people are always kind of miffed about the way Paradox does its DLC. This is really the first large-scale Paradox game that I've played, that I've really invested time into, and that I'm really looking forward to content in the future. So I don't have any opinion either way. I'm sure it will be developed over the next several months, maybe several years with this title. But I started thinking about what I would like to see in the game. So here are a few ideas that I would like to see in the game that may or may not translate into interesting DLC. Now this is one that you see all over the forums. It doesn't matter where you go, you see it on pretty much every forum, is an extended timeline. We have your January 1 starts and August 14th starts, and that's all well and good, and Hearts of Iron is touted as a World War II game, so it would make sense, we would build up to World War II and then work our way through World War II. But oftentimes I found that towards the end game, around 1948, when I'm actually trying to get stuff done, when the game pseudo kind of ends, that I'd like to do something else. I'd like there to be something else. And it would be interesting to see extended tech trees that possibly, go into the 80s and through the Cold War. Or we could take it backwards and have a tech tree that goes back to World War I. We could start the game in World War I, work our way through World War I, have the end of World War I, and depending on what side you fell on in World War I, you would get certain bonuses or certain debuffs as you go through the 20s and 30s, and then when World War II kicks off, those bonuses or debuffs would be there for your nation, and you would have to guide your nation through World War II. Maybe you're a nation, maybe you play as Germany in World War I, but then by the time World War II comes around, you decide you don't want to get kicked around anymore, so you join the Allies and make some weird alternate history. It would be really neat to see, especially with extended timelines, extended triggered events, extended history, either going forward into the Cold War or backwards to World War I, what this game could be. Okay, now this next one might sound a little bit nitpicky, and I'm sure it'll make its way into some form of DLC, whether it's 99-cent DLC or $3 DLC or $9 DLC, depending on how large it is. But I would love to see more animation in the actual unit models. It's fine to get a reskin or whatever, or maybe different uniforms, maybe winter uniforms or summer uniforms, or different camouflages for the vehicles, the airplanes, the tanks, and the warships. But it would be neat to see animations. Perhaps a dug-in animation where you actually have troops inside a little foxhole or laying prone, firing their weapons. Or mountain units, with maybe a little rappel rope in their hand as they're traversing over mountains, and into the fight. It would be neat to see a little bit more variation, and I'd actually like to see the unit models cleaned up a bit, because too often do you see airplanes flying into the ground and then coming out the other side, or boats clipping through the land masses. You see that every single playthrough. You see a boat or a fleet just clip through these land masses and make these huge, wide, ridiculous turns. Or you'll see tanks or motorized units driving through water. If they're at a province that's too close to the shoreline, you'll see them kind of drive through the water and up onto the shoreline. It just needs to be cleaned up a little bit, and that's not necessarily DLC, but that's just something that just kind of needs to be tightened up a little bit. But definitely more variation in the models, but also a lot more variation in the model animations would make watching some of these battles really, really neat. Look at this guy cleaning his boots. Now this next one is, I guess it could be DLC. A modder could also do it at some point, but it would really be more of kind of a script issue, would be flavor names for generals, armies, or just individual units. Say if, as Germany, there was an individual unit, say this unit right here, the 12th Infantry Division, say during the invasion of Poland, they single-handedly capture Warsaw without any help. They could be awarded some high German citation, and then they would receive the nickname, the Conqueror of Warsaw, or the Liberators of Warsaw. Or if a unit, if a Polish unit was dug in this province right here, near Danzig, and, just withstood this huge amount of German assault, for days and days or weeks. After a while, they would kind of become renowned for their ability to be dug in, and they would, maybe get the nickname the Stalwart Defenders, or the Wall of Danzig, or something like that. Just these weird little flavor names. Or if you had a unit that was involved in, say, a lot of overrunning of divisions, and there was a lot of enemy deaths attached to that unit. A lot of divisions were overrun when that unit was around. They could be named, the Butchers or whatever, something neat like that. And same could go for generals. Different generals would get different names, or different admirals would get different nicknames depending on how they actually perform or fail to perform. Maybe they could have like a negative nickname, like the Cowards of Dresden, maybe a German unit that fled Dresden while it was being assaulted, or something like that. It would just be interesting, and it would kind of give sort of a role-playing aspect of it, but it would also kind of get you attached to certain generals or to certain units, and really kind of watch them through the progression of the game. And definitely, another one that I would love to see is more fleshed out focus trees. As you can see, this is Colombia, and this is just the generic fleshed out, or this is just the generic tree that a lot of the minor nations get. It would be interesting to see, if you were playing as, say, Australia or something. If you were playing it as Australia, if you had a specific branch, or maybe two differing branches, where at some point you deal with Japan, because Japan is going to be, the big boy on the block as far as this area of the world, and maybe you befriend Japan, or maybe you defy Japan, and then you go down a different tree. It would be nice to see fleshed out trees, and it would also be nice to see extended trees, because any of us who have played beyond really 1944, you realize that after a while you kind of just run out of crap to do. You either completely close off a branch of the tree because you have you can only take one or the other, or you end up at some point just getting dumb crap like special forces or something like that, because you've got nothing else to choose. So it would be interesting to see more specialized focus trees for some of these smaller nations, and then an extended focus tree for some of the larger nations that could maybe bring us in to possibly an extended timeline. If we went with an extended timeline, it would be interesting to see, hey, we're going into the 50s, we're going into the 60s, so our focuses as a nation would obviously change as the decades pass. Another idea that I had was, I thought it would be neat to actually have a more fleshed out command structure and a longer, possibly slower and more fleshed out general progression, the way your generals progress. Say at the beginning of the war, or at the beginning of the game, 1936, you start out with 50 quote-unquote commanders. 30 of them are majors, 15 of them are colonels, and 5 of them are full-fledged generals. Now, you could decide you would still have the option to promote anybody you wanted to, but say if you took a major, and, it could be the breakdown, like field marshals could still command an unlimited number of troops, generals could still only command 24, colonels could only command, say, 12, and majors can only command 6. It would behoove you to take a major, give him 6 units, and have him fight a few battles, develop him a little bit, figure out what kind of awards that he received. Like you determine the medals that he's given based on some sort of commander skills. Say like your army experience, it would cost 2 2 army experience to award a general a medal and give him a full-fledged skill, or 5 army experience to award a higher ranking medal to give him a better boost, and then perhaps 10 army experience to promote a major to a colonel, and a colonel to a general, and then a general to a field marshal. And that way you could have the choice of taking a major and just promoting him straight to field marshal if you had enough points, but he would be very undeveloped and very weak. But if you took a major and developed him and groomed him to be a colonel, and then assigned him 12 units, and then you groom him, and then he becomes a better combatant, a better leader. He's gone through more campaigns, and then you promote him to general, and then eventually promote him to field marshal. It would be nice if you could really develop your commanders and decide which way you want them to go, instead of just kind of giving this random roll of the dice. Excuse me. Another thing that would be really interesting, especially for commanders, and it would make them a more valued asset. Now, if an army is overrun, the commander usually just goes back into the command pool. I've never really seen them get killed, but it would be interesting if you could assign a commander to a specific unit. Say if we've got this guy right here, we have this army, Gerard von Rudenstedt, and we could assign him to, say, the 3rd Infantry Division. That was his command division. And then, so he's constantly assigned to this division, and maybe there would be like a little star by the helmet saying this was the command division. But if that division was ever overrun in combat, there could be a roll of the dice on whether or not General Rudenstedt was killed or captured. And if you had maybe groomed him from a major and promoted him to colonel, and then groomed him as a colonel, and then promoted him to general, and then gave him these elite units and the best supplies and the best equipment, just to lose him in some freak accident, you weren't watching a specific front, and he got surrounded, he went out of supply for a couple of days, and then he was overrun by overwhelming forces, it could really kind of break the morale. And it would be interesting if there was a flavor dialogue, those little newspaper dialogues that come up, General Rudenstedt, blah blah blah, commander of this army was killed in combat today, and the whole nation weeps for this loss of this great war hero, blah blah blah. It would attach you to the generals a little bit more, and really make them an asset, as opposed to just something that's like, he's just a portrait in the corner of this army, I'm not really sure what he does, and his skills are kind of passive, I don't really know, whatever. Because it seems now, the system that exists now, the generals are really kind of interchangeable after a while. Once they hit like level 6, and they have almost every skill, to some percentage researched or learned, they're all just kind of interchangeable. You could look at one guy and be like, hey, I really like your mustache, or I really like your hat, so I'll put you in charge. At this point, I don't know, they just almost seem kind of pointless. So it would be interesting to see a really fleshed out command structure, as well as almost kind of an RPG-ish fleshed out progression, where you decide who gets the promotion, you decide who gets that medal or who gets that citation, you decide which way you want him to be developed. Well, that's it. I guess that was my five ideas for DLC, 5 hopes and wishes for Hearts of Iron 4. Some of them may seem kind of silly or completely impossible. Others, I think they're all kind of interesting. Some may seem petty, but these are just my ideas. My ideas for something that could be done in the future. If you guys have any ideas for something that could be done in the future, put it down in the comments below. It'd be interesting to see what folks would like to see for this. In the meantime, if you enjoy this, give me a subscribe, share it with your friends, share it wherever you like. My name's Dead Winter Dead. Thanks for watching.